Hi viewers, how is it going? I hope everyone who is watching this video is doing pretty well. In this following video presentation, I am going to talk about the actual research that I made last year and a few months of this year. As you can see there, the title is The Impact of Virtual Learning on High School Students' Motivation. And as you can read there as well, my name is Matías Miranda. This is a presentation made for a module called Escritura Avanzada, and my professor is Ms. Karina Cerda. Let's begin. Well, now, first of all, I am going to talk about the context of the research that I made. First of all, as you can see there, it says description of the practicum center. I've been last year on a rural state-run high school from Colbún. Where is Colbún? As you can see there in the last picture, Colbún is like the rural zone or area of Linares. It is between Linares and Talca, and it is around 20 kilometers away of Linares as a reference. And regarding the school, sorry, how is this school? Basically, as I already said, it's rural. It is a high school, and what else? Now let's talk about the students. The students are all of them from high school level, so they have at least 14 years, and they got pretty poor background. They tend to be from low-class families in terms of socioeconomic situation, and for the same reason, they do not tend to have a very high level of English acquisition. Now, concluding with the context, I am going to talk about my own role at the school, also known as my practicum center. Well, first of all, as you can see there, it says role of practicum student. First of all, as it's known, I've been an entire year on that school, basically as a practicum student and also as a pre-service teacher. Secondly, as you can see there, it says pre-service teacher. And basically in this phase, I just made some classes, some interventions, and I taught some stuff to my students who at the same time were my participants, that we are going to talk about it a few minutes after. Then the role of moderator, basically because I always been aware of my students, of my participants as well. And since last year I had a practicum of consejo de curso and of jefatura in Spanish, I've been, apart from a teacher, I've been their moderator. And finally, we have the sort of researcher as well, since, as I already said, basically I made my practicum there, but at the same time, I made my first investigation and my first research with that school, with those students and participants. So now let's talk about the statement and origin of the research focus. First, as you can see there, we have description of the problem detected within the educational setting. So first of all, as known since the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic on 2020, we faced several issues regarding motivation on our students. It doesn't matter, and it didn't matter if they are from, or if they were from high school, elementary, or even the university or college. So basically, the motivation was a pretty important and determinant factor, basically because of the use of virtual learning. And also, in addition to what I have said, it didn't matter the subject or the content that we learned and taught. It doesn't matter if it was English or maths or language classes, etc. So basically, it was a problem related with virtual learning and the impact that it had on motivation with students from 9th grade. Then we have orientation and help received from peers and teachers to design the research. Well, basically, we had two sites here. We have, first of all, Utalca site, and then we have ex-school site, because we are not able to say the name. Well, regarding Utalca, I have anything to say in a good way. I always felt supported by my supervisor teacher from practicum and from research investigation or proyecto de grado or degree project that it was called on 2021. I felt strongly supported, so I don't have anything to add in a positive way. But regarding my practicum center, that it was where I made this investigation, I have to say that they weren't very supportive, in my opinion. They always made us feel alone in terms of support. We always felt that we do everything by ourselves in a good and in a bad way. So what does it mean? If we made a mistake, it was because of our fault. And if we made something pretty good and effective, it was thanks to ourselves or also to the support given by UTALCA, but not from them. So then we have relevant pieces of research that were considered to design the research. Basically, for this investigation, it was used some pieces of research from Creswell, basically, and that's it. Last year, we have been very approached to those type of texts. So basically, we use almost every single type of text made by Creswell in 2009, to be more specific. And finally, we have general and specific objectives of my research. Basically, in a general objective, we have to see to what extent has virtual EFL learning in the context of COVID-19 pandemic impacted 9th and 10th graders L2 motivation. Since we are studying English, we gave an approach, obviously, to English classes or L2 classes. And the specific objective of this research, it was basically to understand which factors made this problematic possible, since virtual learning, motivation, or maybe background, among other factors. This part, it wasn't included in the PowerPoint presentation. However, I decided to write it here because I think it's pretty important to see the approach of this investigation. The research question. Concerning the problem presented in the previous section, the following research question proposed is the following. To what extent has virtual EFL learning in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic impacted 9th and 10th graders L2 motivation? So basically, we do not want to fix anything here. We just wanted to see to what extent, as this piece of text says, has virtual learning in the EFL context and also in the COVID-19 pandemic context impacted 9th and 10th graders L2 motivation. So basically this means to what extent has virtual learning impacted EFL learning on students from first and second year of high school. Well, now let's talk about the methods. First, I'm going to talk about the research design and the methods used. Basically, the method and design that I decided to use, it was basically a mixed method research. I made a mixed method research since I thought in those times that it was, even though it was a little bit harder in terms of the amount of work that I had to do and also the amount of data that I had to gather, I realized that it was the most effective and the most valid way in which I could show to the people this research. So basically, in resume, I decided to do it with mixed method to gather both types of data, qualitative and quantitative, in order to gather as much data as possible and basically two types of data. All right. Then we have any interventions that were carried out. So basically, as you can see there, I didn't made an intervention since, as you could remember, my research question says to what extent. So basically, I never been trying to fix something. I just been there to understood and realize and go through all the data and see how much or how many of my students felt unmotivated or motivated. So basically, I didn't make an intervention at all because I just go through the results and the opinions of my students. Description of the intervention, I won't say anything for obvious reasons. And then we have the instruments used to collect the data. Basically, I used a survey with a Likert scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree, in which I asked 8 things or 8 questions, in which it said, for example, I am feeling motivated while I am at English classes. So they have to point there if they feel strongly disagree with what is mentioned or strongly agree. Regarding the instruments, in addition to what I have said already, I also added a open-ended questionnaire in which basically it was a type of sort of virtual interview, because I basically asked my participants some questions and then they just had to like answer it with their own words and express themselves about how they felt in those times. Regarding the number of participants, I invited 50 students. 50 participants were invited, but just 30 of the 50 participated. So basically, the number of participants were 30, in which 50 were invited. Regarding the type of participants, they were students from 9th and 10th grade. They had since 14 until 16 years old, and they were from a low class in terms of socioeconomic situation, and they've been all from the same school, that it was an state-run high school and a rural school. Well, regarding the findings, well, the data, it was pretty shocking, but at the same time, it wasn't surprising. Basically because the results were pretty low in terms of the amount of motivation that our students had. But at the same time, it wasn't for us a surprise. Since the beginning of the pandemic, it was pretty known that mental health and other related aspects such as motivation, how they feel in terms of mood, anxiety, etc. It was some stuff that they've been very affected because of the pandemic. So basically, regarding my data, around the 80% of my students or my participants felt very unmotivated while learning English in a virtual way. And also regarding the open-ended questionnaire, basically said that even though the approach of these questions were with English classes, they felt unmotivated with all their subjects. Now we can see there, point B, that it says include a discussion of your data considering your initial research ideas and the relevant literature included in the report. Basically, at the beginning, that it was on March or April of 2021, we began doing this research. And to be very honest, and to be very humble, we had the results that we waited for. Basically because at that point we had already 1 year of pandemic. So that means 1 year of virtual learning, online education. So the students already felt very uncomfortable, and not only them, also us as university students. So if we were adults and we felt like that in those times, we were pretty sure that teenagers will felt even worse. So basically the results, as I already said at the beginning of this slide, were serious, but at the same time we weren't surprised at all. Well, regarding the implications, as you can see in point A, basically the implications that this had, well, now they are not very useful, since the beginning of the pandemic was a few years ago, and since those times we are back in terms of face-to-face classes. Some schools still get online learning, but with just some subjects, or when they got several cases of COVID-19. So basically, I think this won't be very useful, to be honest, because the peak of the pandemic already happened. But if we already had virtual learning in a fake scenario, of course, I will say that maybe the implication of this will see the impact that it had and see as an educational community how to solve this and fix this. And also this research helped to make people who do not know too much about this realize the real impact that online classes had on their children, because some parents never been like aware of it, and they've been low-key in terms of how their children approach this new modality, that it was new for teachers and students, and also for some parents. And B, discuss the implications of your research for your future teaching practices. Well, as I already said, since all of this was made on a virtual modality, I don't think that this model will be pretty effective nowadays, since we are in a face-to-face modality, and the simple fact of have face-to-face classes motivate a bit more for students, for the simple reason of being at school with their peers. But as I already said in point A, if nowadays, for example, we will have still online classes, I will say that this will make me understand a bit more my students and search for new modalities or new ways of teaching to make my students feel a little bit less unmotivated and feeling more comfortable with my own classes. And now we have summary of the information. As you can see there, there are some of the points that I already mentioned before. We have A, the context. So basically, I made this research on my practicum center that at those times were in a state-run rural high school from Colbún in Maule region, that it was like the rural places near to Linares, at 20 kilometers away from the city or from the town, because Linares is a town. I used 9th and 10th graders that they had at those times from 14 to 16 years old, and all of them were from low class in terms of socioeconomic situation. The statement and the origin of the research focus was basically to go through the levels of motivation that our students had and see why affected or not their levels of motivation. The methods, it was basically a mixed method approach with qualitative and quantitative approaches. Then we used a questionnaire, and we use a survey with a Likert scale. The findings were pretty familiar for us. Students felt strongly and very unmotivated, and the implications are not very useful now since we have face-to-face classes. But basically, with this, we can realize the impact, the real impact, the reality that our students had in the past and how to solve it, basically. But as I already said, it doesn't matter now. And the implications, I already said it. So basically, that was the summary of the information. So basically, we have the references here. We got references from Creswell, for Donjay, for Paul Kinghorn, or whatever it is called, among others. So basically, those are the most helpful references for myself. And yeah, basically, that was my presentation. So yeah, I would like to thank to you all, whoever who is watching this video. And Ms. Karina, again, thank you for everything. I hope to see you very soon. And I hope you enjoyed this piece of information. So bye-bye. Thanks for everything. Be in touch. Bye.